Manchester United 3, Athletic Club Bilbao 0, away from home. Toughest game of the Europa League campaign against the supposed favourites. And we now go to Old Trafford with a 3-0 lead. Now, look, it's European football. Anything can happen in the second leg if you concede early. Anything can happen. But we pretty much look set for the final unless a disaster class happens. And I will say, Bilbao, the first 20 minutes, we could not play out from the press. It looked like they were going to score 2 or 3. It looked like we were going to lose early on. Obviously, Maguire, brilliance, Casemiro goal, and Casemiro and Bruno in those first 20 minutes, and Garnacho were the standout players, and everybody else was a bit shaky. The goal gave us that boost. Hojlund wins the penalty, the red card, and the game went into our hands. And so, I thought we were going to lose or maybe be 1-1, and I would have been happy with a draw before, going back to Old Trafford for a draw before this game because I was nervous. Bilbao are good. They're fourth in La Liga. They're not a bad side. They're the best team in the Europa League by a long way. If you go off like the domestic seasons. But when you have players like Bruno Fernandes and Casemiro, this season he was written off a couple of months ago. I was one of them. Amorim has found Casemiro, and we'll talk about that. Bruno Fernandes, best player in the whole competition, just too good for the Europa League. But yeah, we managed to make it 3-0, and I'm just disappointed we didn't make it 4-5-0. I was annoyed in that second half that we didn't just make it 4-0. 4-0 would have felt safe. 3-0 we can still bottle. 4-0 I'd have felt safe because you go 1-0 down, they've got 2 after half time to go back and score. That's what worries me. But I think we're through to the final, and I think we pretty much have Spurs to beat. This for us is the final. This semi-final for me is tougher than who we're meeting in the final. I know Spurs have beaten us 3 times this season, but on paper, Bilbao are a better side. So, yeah, let's talk about the game. Let's talk about what we've learned from the game. Let's talk about the Europa League going forward and more. First of all, Bruno Fernandes. Bruno was excellent. That was a true captain's leadership performance from Bruno Fernandes. We were just talking about Odegaard the other day. Against PSG, went missing, didn't even know Odegaard was on the field. Bruno Fernandes, the penalty, the noise, the stadium, puts it away. A goal not long later, a well-taken goal. You don't trust anyone more than Bruno Fernandes in those scenarios to finish. But it wasn't just that. It was his touch. It was his play. If we can find his game numbers here, look at this. Got the goal. But again, his all-round play, the passes, 3 key passes, 6 out of 8 ground duels won, 3 out of 4 long balls, 5 out of 7 crosses. He was just fantastic today. He was pulling the strings. And, people used to say, Odegaard being better than Bruno should be common knowledge. And people used to say that Bruno doesn't show up in big games. Bruno Fernandes has just shut the F up with all his haters. I did a Team of the Season video earlier today, and I had people fuming at me that I put Bruno Fernandes in Team of the Season. I said, just because you don't like Man United and just because Man United aren't good doesn't mean you can take out on Bruno Fernandes. He deserves to be in Team of the Season. Szoboszlai should be there instead of Bruno. No, Bruno's better than Szoboszlai. Szoboszlai, Liverpool have won the league. They're fantastic, but Bruno is better than Odegaard. He's better than Szoboszlai. For me, he is too good to be playing Europa League football, and it doesn't take a genius to tell you that. He was unbelievable. I thought Casemiro was man of the match. I think he's shown real improvement lately. Casemiro, 2 months ago, he looked done. Ruben Amorim's thought, you know what? Let's utilise Casemiro and not ask him to run ridiculous amounts, and he's just gone up levels. Hojlund. I was very critical of Hojlund the other day, and he's not been good enough this season. Doesn't take a genius to tell you that. But he looked better today. I think the goal, he said he needed that goal against Bournemouth, helped him. I thought he looked more confident today. I thought he was holding off defenders well, won some fouls. And do you know what? I said the one thing about Hojlund is I think the refs do not give Hojlund the benefit of the doubt ever. I said in the Premier League, Hojlund's been poor, but there's a lot of 50-50s and they never go Hojlund's way. I feel like the refs in the Premier League have never protected Hojlund. And I felt today he got protected by the ref because the amount of times he was fouled, I feel like in the Premier League they wouldn't do anything. The ref was good today. Bilbao were losing their heads at him, but if you actually watch back all the decisions, no, it wasn't a red card on Maguire. Yes, it was a blatant penalty in Hojlund. Bilbao can lose their minds all they want at the ref, and they created an atmosphere where I think had they not created that atmosphere, we could have maybe had another penalty on Garnacho in the second half. That could have been the same story. But I thought, the ref did good. I think he did well under the pressure, and Hojlund was fouled a lot. He won a lot of fouls. His hold-up was better. His movement was better. He won the penalty. He looked more confident. I thought it was a much better game from Hojlund. He didn't score today, but we were seeing bits of him and his involvement in play. And that's all we can ask from our striker if he's not scoring, at least to be involved in play. And we saw that today. And I thought he was a lot better. I thought Garnacho was a lot more dangerous than Williams. I said this, and I got stick for this. I said I really rated Nico Williams. I watched him in the Euros. I watched him last season. But when I've watched Nico Williams this year, I've seen inconsistencies. And I got stick back in October for saying, to be honest, there's not much difference between Garnacho and Nico Williams. They're both electric, but they're both frustrating. I got so much stick for that. But Williams did nothing. Masraoui had him in his pocket. They tried to switch him sides. He did nothing. The Williams brothers got hooked. I thought Garnacho was dangerous today. I thought Yoro's just getting better each game. I thought Yoro was excellent. Maguire, brilliant, turning into a right wing. Done really well there. Maguire and Casemiro, these last few games under Ruben Amorim, have really stepped up, particularly in this Europa League campaign. You know what I've noticed? Is the leaders have stepped up. Casemiro, Maguire, Bruno. They are the leaders. Maguire, ex-captain, Casemiro, most experienced player we have, won the most trophies, Bruno, our current captain. They were the three players that stepped up. Players like Leny Yoro just show his brilliance, of course. But they stepped up today. Garnacho was exciting. I do think Maino should have come on a lot earlier. A guy really struggled in those first 20 minutes, and I thought, get him off, get Maino on. But then a guy did grow into the game. I think Maino could have come on, and I think Ruben Amorim is just struggling to figure out what his best role was for Maino. I think the only negative was those first 25 minutes, I was thinking, get Amas and Maino on, because Ugarte and Dorgu were really poor those first 25 minutes. Really poor. They were being pressed, they were being targeted, they were giving the ball away. But as soon as we went down to 10 men and the press wasn't ridiculous, they grew into it. Dorgu started putting in some good balls, and Dorgu had a very good second half going forward. Ugarte, I thought, had a very good sort of second half of the first half. His ability to play in small spaces in the final third was good. He started the second half fine, but the first 20 minutes, Ugarte and Dorgu were having a stinker. And I think going 1-0 up, then the red card changed that, because we did really struggle against Bilbao's press. We are going in 3-0 up, but Bilbao, they pressed us. We looked forced into making mistakes. I felt like we were going to make mistakes. We did struggle. And just because the second half was so easy, the second leg, they're going to come at us, all guns blazing, look to score early. And that's when we're going to be a bit wary. And you saw Lyon, they scored 2 goals. You saw we scored 3 goals in 7 minutes. Things can happen. And that's why I'm annoyed that we didn't get the 4-0 just to take that extra goal with us, because I thought we did enough of that 4-0 in the end. I thought Masraoui was composed, good on the ball, but we did struggle in those first 20 minutes, and that was concerning. But as soon as we went up against 10 men and they went 2-3-0 down, the game was ours. And I'm very happy with the 3-0 scoreline. I cannot complain, but I am a little bit disappointed we didn't make it 4-0. I am a little bit. The Bilbao's pressed, they had us pinned. There was worrying things, but Maguire, Casemiro was excellent. The red card changed a lot. Bilbao played dirty. Bilbao played to foul us, and the ref wasn't giving it. Bilbao played to injure us. They came to foul us. They played dirty. The ref wasn't giving it. And the ref, I thought, was spot on today. And I think that's what struggled them. And I was worried about Ahmad coming on. I thought they were going to kick at him. And they will do that in the second leg. But, sorry, I'm 8 minutes in. I haven't talked about man of the match, Casemiro. He was class. Even when we were struggling in those first 20 minutes, he was class. He was keeping the ball. He was driving forward. This is Champions League Casemiro. This is Casemiro. This is first season Casemiro. He took his goal well. He controlled the midfield. He broke up play. He used his experience. He was excellent. That's back-to-back elite performances versus Lyon and Bilbao. Amorim has brought Casemiro back to life. A couple months ago, we all thought he was washed. We all thought he was done. I remember him and Eriksen starting in that Newcastle game a couple months back, and it was atrocious. He, in the Europa League semi-final in extra time versus Lyon, was the man. Him today, he was the man. Him and Bruno was the man. And I said this, Ruben Amorim, realising how to best utilise Casemiro's strengths and adapting his role so he's not being asked to cover ridiculous amounts of ground, is the equivalent of a new signing. Casemiro's gone from looking finished to being class over these last 2 months. Ruben Amorim has realised what Casemiro can and can't do, realised let's adapt his role so he's not asked to cover ridiculous amounts of ground, and he can use his quality in the defensive phases. He can use his quality off the ball. He can use experience. He can use his ability on the ball. And when we're playing Casemiro in a position where he's not being hung out to dry, we're seeing as a good player. And Saudi were having doubts whether to put money on Casemiro in January. But if Saudi are looking at these performances, they're going to be saying, hey, you know what? Right now, Casemiro is, for me, ahead of Ugarte in the pecking order. And I would not have said that 2 months ago. He's been really good, and I thought he was excellent today. And I think in these European games, I think the Premier League, there's more physicality, there's more intensity. I think we've been better in the Europa League this season. And I think in the Europa League, that's when you need Casemiro. Of course, Spurs being a Premier League club in the final, we are going to have to look at it in that sense. We've lost 3 times to them. Let's hope Bodo Glimt can do something. Spurs have picked up some injuries. Spurs have to go to the artificial pitch. They did concede a goal late on. Let's hope Bodo Glimt can do something. This was his game numbers: 5 out of 5 aerial duels won, 106 touches, 72 passes completed, 4 clearances, 4 tackles, 3 out of 4 tackles won, 1 goal. He was unbelievable. As I said, Bruno Fernandes, so many clever passings, little taps, space creation, movement, just creating things. He showed Odegaard levels. Bruno compared to Odegaard, semi-finals, night and day. Night and day. The debate is over. Other notes, I just mentioned that Leny Yoro I thought was very good, very calm on the ball, handled the Williams brothers well, getting better and better each week. Very good. Yeah, his ceiling is crazy. Just unbelievable how good he's going to be. As I said, I thought Dorgu and particularly Agati really struggled early on, but I thought they grew into the game. It ended up being a solid performance from everyone, but the first 25 minutes for Dorgu and Agati was shocking. They really was shocking the first 25 minutes for them, but they did end up having good games after that. Mazraoui was a bit shaky, but I thought he was very good, very composed. Shaky 20 minutes, very good, very composed. I thought Mazraoui had a very good game. 30 million quid, 40 million quid, whatever it was a bargain. Yeah, look at these numbers from Mazraoui. I thought he was excellent. Anyway, it looks like we're in the Europa League semi-final, but look, it's Man United. We could bottle it. There's other things I want to talk about. That Garnacho looked electric. I think he had to be fouled to stop him. I think Bilbao, they just kept trying to tactically foul Garnacho. I thought Hojlund played with more confidence. Lindelof worried me, but he made a fantastic goal line clearance, so I let him off for that. Referee got major calls right. Mason Mount wasn't great off the bench. That's a conversation for another day, maybe. He got stuck in. I just think he needs that fitness. But yeah, I just wish we'd have won at 4-0. But yeah, Casemiro and Bruno in particular today, the momentum. Let's take that. Let's rest versus Brentford and let's go and make sure we win at Old Trafford. Thank you for watching. Bye.